Good evening. My name is Alan Campbell, and as chair of the West McCosker Neighborhood Council, I want to welcome everyone to our 2021 virtual annual meeting. I also want to let you know, as you can see on the screen, that this meeting is being recorded, and I request that everyone keep their microphone muted unless called upon to speak. Before we go any further, I want to introduce the other members of the board, and right now, it looks like there are only 3 other members. Lynette Davis, our vice president, is traveling abroad and not with us tonight. We do have our treasurer, David Stogard. There you are, Dave.
Hello.
Hello. Richard Logan, our longest serving member, I see is with us. You want to wave your hand, Richard? Thank you.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody.
And
thank you, Alan and Michelle, for doing all the work to get this all set up.
Welcome. And Bob Gordon, I see, is with us. Thank you, Bob. Do we have any other board members with us at this time? Okay, I hope that they will be joining us shortly. I also want to introduce Michelle Sass. Michelle has ably managed our neighborhood business for the past 2 years.
Hi, everybody.
Hey. Hi, Michelle. And I want to announce Martha Yunker has resigned from the board because she expects to be doing a lot of travel, but we thank her for her years of service. That brings our board membership down to 8 out of an authorized 11. So our quorum is now 5. It looks like we're still short of a quorum for regular neighborhood business.
Hi, am I the new one? Am I new?
Who's that?
This is Melanie.
Oh, hi, Melanie.
I spoke to you earlier last week.
Alan, John, Joey, and Martha are all struggling to get logged in right now. So I'm just gonna do a little troubleshooting and try to see.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
They may need the password.
Yep.
You know, it took me a couple times. It helped me to go all the way out and come back in.
This is Lene Palmisano, our city council member. Hey, Lene.
Yeah, thanks, Lene. I know you're not on for presentation
For quite some time, but I just want to.
You're welcome to join us and listen to what our West McCosker residents have to say in the meantime.
Exactly. Thanks.
So we do have, as I understand it, 2 people who have expressed interest in joining the board. Is that right?
Actually, it's 3. So
3.
Why don't we just have a brief introduction of the 3 West McCosker residents who have stepped up and said they'd like to be board members. Tim Walker, I see that you're on. You want to just say hello and any words of introduction you'd like to make?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tim Walker. I live at Exxon Green over on Excelsior and 32nd, USA Chowan Avenue. Apparently Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash don't know how to get to us, so it's quite a difficult time for them to get to us. I'm born and raised from Dallas, Texas, moved up here when I was 13, grew up in East St. Paul, went to college at St. Cloud State University with a biomedical degree, undergraduate degree, played some football, stopped doing that, moved back to the cities in Minneapolis, where I worked a couple of jobs, and I currently work for Beagle's Management here in the West Beta Makaska neighborhood in our apartment complex. And I just wanted to be able to show up here and be able to be a part of this team. So nice meeting everybody.
Welcome. And Megan Vetterman, I see you're here with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Ellen, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Betterman. I live at the Lake City Homes right off of Drew and Lake, and have lived here for about 6 years. And my background is in content publishing, communication strategy, and oh, sounds like we might need to meet.
Could somebody mute? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I was saying that I have a background in content strategy and publishing and a lot of digital work. I currently work for a wellness organization called Moby and lead our content strategy practice there. So I want to be involved with the communications out to our neighborhood and help improve how we're communicating with everyone in the neighborhood to know what's going on, especially as the light rail comes through. That's a big topic of conversation, obviously. I have a background at going to University of St. Thomas as well as St. Catherine University for the MBA program. So I have some local education and have lived both in St. Paul and the Minneapolis side for about 20 years. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Megan. And Melanie Felberg, last but not least, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Melanie Felberg. We haven't renamed our association, so right now we're just calling it 3150 Excelsior. It's that little brick building that's an L. So I'm a first-time homeowner. I've been in the neighborhood longer, but I've been in this building and a homeowner for like 2 years. So I'm still kind of smarting from that, coming up with the closing and have all of that first-time homeowner experience right under my belt. I'm on the association of my condo, and we have gotten very involved in native landscaping, replacing everything, like getting rid of the daylilies when we can, just one at a time, and replacing them with sedum and other native and prairie items. So I'm very interested in the green space. So
Thank you, Melanie. Michelle, do we have any other board members?
We do. I just sent you a message. Joey was able to get in. He's on now. So
Okay, great. We now have a quorum. So first order of business will be approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was September. Would somebody like to make that motion?
I move.
And we have a
Richard.
second. Thank you, Richard.
I second.
Thanks, Dave. Any discussion or edits to the September minutes? If not, all in favor of adopting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting minutes for September are adopted. Next item is receipt of the treasurer's report. Dave, comments?
Yeah. We've got just a few things going on. We've got Shine Box was our big expenditure last month, and it's really kind of the first of many to come from them as they fulfill making or producing our website and online content for the neighborhood council. And but I assume we're going to probably be getting.
Can you make it a little louder?
Talking to me? Anyway, so that'll be the first. I think our contract's for about 30,000, isn't it, Alan?
25, actually.
25. Okay, so this is 40% of that. So, and we've also started paying for the buckthorn removal, which we approved a year or two ago. And the Bakken, which is a large commitment we've got left out there for education for the neighborhood. They put up a wetlands watershed education display that we're starting, that we said we'd contribute funds to, and we've just made the first payment today on that, and you'll see more of that coming in the future. But other than that, nothing very exciting.
Thank you. I'll note all those projects have been approved by the city, so we are funded
Yes.
for them. Okay, next item of business is amendments to our bylaws. Now, this is something that's required by the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department of the city of Minneapolis that oversee us. If we want to remain a recognized neighborhood organization and continue to receive funding, we need to make some bylaws changes. Everyone on our email distribution list should have received these bylaws, and they've been posted on our website. And approval of these bylaws is not up to the council, it's up to all residents in the neighborhood who are on the call and eligible to vote. One of the amendments places term limits on the board so that no more than 25% of the board may serve for more than 6 years. That's a city requirement. The other amendments update the bylaws to reflect our new neighborhood name of West McCoska, change the list of committees to match the committees that are actually in place, and change our statement of purpose to emphasize our goals of having greater participation by underrepresented groups and creating a greater sense of public citizenship as we work toward the common good. Does anybody have any questions about these bylaws changes?
Actually, the agenda.
If not, could we have a motion to approve the bylaws changes? And this motion can come with a board, from a board member or from any resident of the neighborhood.
I make a
I will
motion.
move. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I just said I make a motion, we approve the amendment to the bylaws.
Thank you. Richard, you had a second, I believe?
I'll second. Yep.
Okay. Any discussion?
That's pretty cool.
If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Thank you. Any
All
opposed? Okay, our new bylaws have been adopted. And the
Okay.
next item of business is election of new members of the board. We have candidates, Tim Walker, Megan Betterman, and Melanie Felberg. Do we have anybody else who would like to join the board? Okay, hearing none, can we have a motion?
I move the slate,
We,
the three people. I'm very impressed by the skill sets of all of them, and I think they complement each other and the existing board members in a whole series of very, very positive and productive ways. So this is a good group, and I thank you all for stepping forward.
Do we have a second? And again, the second can come from any resident of the neighborhood.
Second that.
I second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of Timothy Walker, Melanie Felberg, Megan Betterman joining our board to bring it to its full authorized number of 11, please say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
So now we need confetti.
Yeah.
If we were at the Bakken, we could have some. Great, welcome. Okay, one more item of business before we open it up to the public for general discussion of concerns. And that is just to approve an expenditure of up to $1,000 to replace 3 existing West Calhoun neighborhood ID signs with 5 new West McCoska ID signs, adding 2 intersections that currently don't have signs. Tim and Lynette, who are not here, had emailed their desire to move and second this motion, but since they're not able to join us, I think just for the record, we should get a motion from a board member who is
So
here
move.
tonight. Bob, thank you. We have a second.
I second.
Aye.
Second.
Thank you.
Alan, I assume that the people who were just added to the board are now able to do things like,
That is correct. They are, Megan, Melanie, Tim, you are board members. So I didn't hear who seconded that, but
I'll second that.
okay, we have a second from Melanie. Great, well, your first act as a board member.
Melanie is making waves already. Way to go, Melanie.
Any questions about the signage? And just, by the way,
Alan?
yeah,
Maybe you can explain to the new board members and the rest of the community what it's about.
Yes, please, please.
yeah, well, as I hope you all know, last July at a board meeting, we voted to change the name of our neighborhood from West Calhoun to West McCoska, representing the Lakota heritage of this neighborhood. The Lakota is actually farmed in the southeast corner of the lake across from where we are. And directly across from us, the neighborhood is now East B'nai McCoska. We are now West McCoska. And we still have all street signs that say West Calhoun. So we're replacing the 3 that are there and also adding one where there is currently no street sign coming into the neighborhood on Excelsior Boulevard. And we want to put one down by the Bakken so folks know that the Bakken is part of our neighborhood. So that's the purpose of asking to spend up to $1,000 for new ID signs. Any further discussion or questions? If not, the motion has been made and seconded. So would board members in favor of approving up to $1,000 for new neighborhood ID signs, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We will go ahead and get bids on those street signs. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the meeting up to any resident of West McCoska. I'd like to hear the voices about what you think are the most pressing issues facing our neighborhood and that you would like to see the council advocate in your behalf. I'm pleased to see that I believe our council member, Lene Palmisano, I believe is still, yes, there she is still here. So she will be hearing your concerns. And after we find out, we as a board, I think, have some thoughts about what the main concerns of the neighborhood are, but we want to hear it from you. Maybe it's safety, maybe it's a lot of other issues. So at this time, I would open it up for any neighborhood resident to speak out, ask questions, say what you'd like the board to be advocating in your behalf about.
I'm Therese Welch. I would like 1 minute, please.
Yes.
I am very excited by the work that the neighborhood council is doing. And I'm a resident over at Westwood on West 32nd by the golf course. I'm very excited about the planning that's been taking place for years. The only thing I will say that I noticed is I was sitting at Taberna and realized that when the hotel goes up, they will lose their lake view. And I am just concerned that somewhere, we do conserve something of the lake view for people who need to sit. However that gets done. Thank you. I will pass.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the
Thank you for that comment.
what hotel is this?
BP station law.
Yeah, actually, the latest proposal, which has been approved by the City Planning Commission, is not for a hotel, but for an apartment building. But the scale will be the same. I mean, in terms of blocking the view from our good neighbors in the Sidna neighborhood and from Taberna, yeah, the issue will be the same.
I stand
Going
corrected.
back,
Thank you.
Going back a few years, we registered our concern about the height and height variances that have been granted for a great many buildings. It goes hand in hand with our concern about perhaps too much density in a small neighborhood. But we have registered our concern several times going back several years. And not just on that proposed building.
Okay, we're still open for any resident to speak on whatever is of concern to you, what you'd like to see the neighborhood council doing.
Well, as safety head, based on quite a bit of feedback from around the neighborhood, there's been great concern about the hot rodding in the executive center parking lot from, say, starting sometimes 10:30, 11 at night, sometimes starting at 1 o'clock in the morning, sometimes going until 3 o'clock in the morning. Very loud, very disruptive, very expensive in terms of the damage to the parking surface. Very gratified to see that the park board put barriers in their section of the lot. And I'm certainly hoping that the Ackerberg company will do the same in their part of the lot. Just strategically place some of those heavy concrete construction barriers that you see alongside construction sites all over the place. Just put a few in some strategically chosen parking spots, make it impossible for people to do donuts and spin their tires in the parking lot. Huge concern. I've gotten phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning about it.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I heard that there was some hot rodding and doing wheelies in the Whole Foods parking lot over the weekend, since the Lakeside Center parking lot was partly closed off. Alyssa, I see you're with us this evening. Do you know about that or have any concerns you want to express?
You know, I had not heard about that. I had heard that there was what was going on with the executive center, but I hadn't heard anything going on in our parking lot. But I just made myself a note because I am concerned if barriers go up in that parking lot, which is great, that could move that activity over here pretty quickly. So I'll message our landlord.
Well, I can tell you this, that I think twice in the past, people who are judging where this is happening by sound because they live a few blocks away and they've been awakened at 1:30. They think it's from the Whole Foods lot, but in fact, it's from the executive center lot. So it's on my list to go over there and look and see if I can see any evidence on the surface of the Whole Foods lot. It's not hard to find the evidence.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I come through often in the morning when there aren't that many cars. I haven't seen any, but I haven't been looking super closely. So I'll look for that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also drag racing that happens at 32nd and Excelsior, where, you know, just randomly there'll be loud engine revving and pulling out.
Yeah, well, when they've been chased out of the executive center lot, there have been a couple of occasions where, say, at 1:30 or 2 in the morning, the hot rodders have driven towards St. Louis Park on Excelsior in all 4 lanes, side by side, heading. So if there were ever a car coming in the other direction, they're going 60, 80 miles an hour. It would be just a horrible tragedy waiting to happen.
Yeah, and that hill, there's, you know, it's a slightly hidden view because you have the hill and the bridge.
Right.
Yeah, because this is such a concern as a safety issue for both our neighborhood and for the Cedar Isles Dean neighborhood, which is on the other side of Lake Street. The chair of the Sitten neighborhood and myself wrote a letter to Mayor Fry requesting greater enforcement action to control this dangerous activity. And the mayor did write back telling what enforcement was taking place and talked about coordination with St. Louis Park and with the state patrol, although the state patrol is reluctant to get involved until the action takes place on a state highway such as Route 100. So you know, the police are aware of this, the city is aware of it. We will have the mayor on later. We will have Inspector Blackwell from the 5th Precinct on, so we can air those concerns then. But obviously this is a a concern for people, especially those living in the part of our neighborhood near Lake Street and Excelsior, as well as the Sydenham neighborhood. Would any residents like to comment on other issues they would like us to address?
Yep, this is Michelle. There's two comments in the chat. So one is from C. Sampson that says, I second the concern about density. Public transit will not solve the automobile traffic anytime soon. We're losing the walkability of the area as a result. Heavy traffic is unsafe for pedestrians and it's unpleasant as well. And then there's also a comment by Megan that says you can see the tire marks on the executive building's parking lot and that they may have resurfaced the lot. And then Cal mentioned that Richard, they were alive and well the night of 10/9/10. They moved their donut dope track to the east in the lot.
And that's the part that's owned by the Ackerberg Company and not the Parks Board. Yeah, I called 911 that night too. Cal, thank you for weighing in, Cal. We appreciate it very much. And is it Chris Sampson? Right on with what you say about density. I think we've got to keep density in proportion to, say, the topography of a very small neighborhood.
Okay, and any other concerns? We've heard about density, we've heard about traffic. Race, Bob, were you? Okay. You're mute, Bob.
I'm just moving, never mind.
Okay. Yeah, if we don't have anything further from residents, we're glad to hear the board's concern on these issues as well.
Yeah, I can start. With Halloween coming up and with all the activity going on, is there anything set in place to keep children safe around trick-or-treating? Do we have, as a board, do we have any involvement with community members, policemen, in regards to keeping everyone safe around that time? Or is it hands off currently?
That's a good question, Tim. I want to answer it more generally instead of just about Halloween. The Minneapolis Police Department tries to arrange for neighborhood watches so that residents can take a block. Somebody could be responsible for a block for watching out. This could be especially important on Halloween. We have many blocks in the neighborhood that do not have a person signed up for neighborhood watch. So I'm kind of asking all residents here to consider getting back to the board, and we can put you in touch with the MPD about what is expected as being a member of a neighborhood watch. It involves communicating with the 5th Precinct, getting information from them about providing safety tips to your street or part of the neighborhood, as well as reporting concerns to the police.
You know, there are a couple of challenges that are very, very critical in a neighborhood that has our kind of residential profile, where, you know, the great majority of our people live in large residential buildings. And they generally have a couple of challenges. One is it's very hard to organize a neighborhood watch in that kind of a setting. It's easier when you've got houses side by side on a street. And the other is there's the challenge of getting people to know each other, which is also critical to an effective neighborhood watch, where neighbors know their neighbors. So those are a couple of the things that I'm looking forward to working on with some of our new members, as far as ideas about how we can get people to know each other. Scheduling events that would bring people out so they could socialize and meet and so on.
Yeah, we previously to the pandemic, we would have happy hours once or twice a year open to residents, both to create a sense of community and give an informal opportunity for residents to give their concerns to the board. That, of course, we were planning to do one this fall, but then with the Delta variants kicking in, we've postponed that. But yeah, I welcome ideas from all the residents about ways to get to know each other better, to know the neighborhood, happy hours, any other ideas? I'll open it up to the floor to anybody who has a suggestion, either out loud or in the chat box.
I wonder if we could consider something like meetup groups. You know how there's meetup.org and people have different interests and get together based on those interests. I wonder if there could be anything like that where we would have a few different interest areas and a meetup more outdoors, since we're still in the pandemic. Could be one idea for the neighborhood.
Thank you for that. We've done some things through Meetup in the past, but you know, the pandemic sort of slammed those things closed. But there are other ways of doing things. But well, again, I think one of the challenges I'd like to toss out there is what kinds of events could we put on that would be magnetic for the demographic we have in our neighborhood. Like if there's a celebrity pop star, for example, who's known locally, then, you know, who could put on an outdoor concert, something like that. Open for all kinds of ideas. Board member Bob Gordon brought up the idea of, once again, getting back to encouraging our local business people to give out coupons for coming into Ben and Jerry's or any other place and getting a discount meal or a discount treat or a discount snack or beverage or something. So
well, that was mainly so we could start collecting email addresses so we can actually get contact with people. What I was going to say now was, I live in this condo reasonably right across the street from the Myburger, and people where I live don't know their neighbors.
Right.
And I bet is that the case in some of the apartment buildings too?
Absolutely the case.
Yes.
So maybe the thing to think about is not doing a big thing with, you know, like, but to see if we can think of ways of encouraging a few people, maybe 4 to 6 households getting together. I don't know what this would be right now. I think it's something to consider for a later meeting, but the idea is maybe we need to sort of grow from the bottom up. It just strikes me that knowing your neighbors doesn't happen in a big event.
I mean, I've personally tried to do outreach in the building here. And like really, unless you're offering free food, it's hard to get anyone to give up their lives and come for a night. So, but yeah, I mean, I've tried on repeated times to do things like happy hours or potlucks.
So we're really talking about a two-pronged thing, getting people to know each other, but also getting people to be interested in working with the neighborhood council and getting involved in the neighborhood, which means, you know, making ourselves more visible. So Bob, maybe we could look into co-sponsoring the kind of smaller scale events with individual building managers and things like that.
Exactly.
Show up.
We have a good comment by Michael Sanders in the chat, everybody, that says we could be doing a neighborhood event at the Bakken, and that the Bakken would be happy to work with us on doing an event.
Thank you, Michael. In fact, we had, again, before the pandemic, talked about having an open streets event on 36th Street in front of the Bakken, jointly between our neighborhood and Linden Hills, which is on the other side of 36th to the Bakken. So yeah, lots of good ideas here. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And of course, we've talked quite a bit with Michael Sanders, the current head of the Bakken, about collaborating on any number of projects having to do with the lake area, wetlands, natural areas education, things like that. Thanks. And of course, Michael, you're offering to provide the catering as well. Is that correct?
We would be willing to work with you on it.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to segue into looking for ideas for how we can spend what still $250,000 in neighborhood revitalization funds that we have not yet put to use and are still looking for good ideas. And the reason it's appropriate that Michael is on the call is because one of the uses to which we have put these funds so far is supporting the Bakken and the neighborhood through putting bike racks in front of the Bakken, and also for educational interpretive panels the Bakken has been working on. Michelle, do you have that list of?
I do. Let me pull that up here.
On the screen here?
Yep, give me just a moment to get that.
Now, this will show you how we've spent our neighborhood revitalization dollars thus far, and we are welcome. There it is. Yeah, it's broken down into safety and livability priorities, where we've spent almost $42,000. Besides the bike racks of the Bakken, we have gone beyond our neighborhood to help rebuild the city following the unrest after the murder of George Floyd, giving $20,000 to rebuild Lake Street and West Broadway commercial areas. We've given almost $12,000 to neighborhoods respond to COVID. And in fact, we had budgeted $25,000, but enough money came in so that only $11,871 was needed, which leaves on the very bottom of this page almost $15,000 unallocated, because the city was able to provide enough personal protection equipment before they could spend all of our money. We also gave $5,000 to the Bridge for Youth for homeless outreach. And then within our neighborhood, under green space and amenities, we spent $20,000 on invasive species removal, mostly buckthorn. 17,000 that I mentioned earlier, wetlands and watershed education, interpretive panels with the Bakken, and $10,000 for utility box wraps, which leaves over $250,000 unallocated. And at this time, I will open it up to any resident who has an idea, looking for out-of-the-box ideas, anything that would improve the neighborhood or the city, even if it may not seem practical at this time, you never know. So
Megan in the chat asked, have we ever surveyed neighbors on what they might like to attend? Yes, in fact, we have. The problem is we get very, very little, very small return when we've tried that. And that's part of this, self-reinforcing thing of people not knowing each other and not knowing the neighborhood and so on. So we don't get a lot of return when we try to survey the neighborhood.
There, as you walk along the lake, can I have the floor? Am I okay?
Yes.
Okay. As you walk along the lake, there's this concrete wall that's got graffiti that apparently the park department paints white over occasionally. And I was thinking that's easily the ugliest thing in the entire neighborhood. And would it be appropriate to spend some of this money on a mural that covers that whole thing? And it could be done, I think, very cheaply by involving high school students who are often very artistic, and we could get, not even from this neighborhood, from all over the city, they put it together. Think of something. Anyway, it needs more work, but I think that would be a good thing to do for the entire neighborhood and city, because it's really ugly.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea we can look into.
How many sections of wall, because I've been thinking the same thing, are there? What, about 4 or 5 or 6 sections? I mean, good chunks of wall space. And I'm wondering how many high schools we have in the city. Do we even come near enough wall space to offer it
Bob,
one to each,
you're
or,
muted.
you know,
No, I'm
that's,
not. Continue, please.
that's the way I'm thinking. As you said, the high schools, absolutely. Just would like to know, you know, how many chunks of concrete are there?
Oh, I wasn't thinking about doing individual pictures. I was thinking like one continuous story, image. I don't know what. I would think these kids are often really creative. A lot of them are very artistic. They have art in school, and we should put a proposal together and invite them to come over and see what comes out of it.
Sure. I was just thinking of different ones, you know, but sure, could do one big one.
But I mean, it may be that the best thing to do is separate ones. But again, I think we should, if high school students are the way to go, and we might find some professional artist or two to act as guides or mentors to the whole project, it would be a good experience all around.
I totally agree with you. Isn't it wonderful how great minds think alike?
Well, I don't know about great over here.
Okay.
Chris, thank you in the chat for bringing up the idea of block or building captains. It is something we've talked about, and it is, we have actually included it in one of the projects we're going to be working on from here on. Getting is as far as helping people get to know each other.
I also see in the chat, we have a question, is there any way we could spend money for noise abatement? I'm not, I mean, it's largely an enforcement issue, but I'm not quite, if anybody has any ideas for how money could improve the noise situation.
I think the first thing to do would be to actually get a sound meter and measure some of the noise that goes by. It's all cars accelerating, an occasional car radio, but it's mainly cars accelerating loudly without mufflers or motorcycles. But it'd be nice to know what we're talking about.
Well, I think we know for a fact that there are many extreme violations of noise ordinances because of the very high volume. But you're right, Alan, it really is a matter of enforcement. And it's been a long time since the 5th Precinct has had a squad available to deal with traffic at all.
And I see in the chat, we have a question. Does or how does the council partner with the park board? Yeah, we have been trying to find ways to improve our green space, but the park board is a bureaucracy, and many of the proposals we've come up with have conflicted with our long-term master plan or have required a maintenance contract that we're unable to provide. So yeah, we have worked with the park board, and also, I guess the question of enforcement, I mean, the park board police is responsible for enforcing the traffic laws on the park streets in our neighborhood. And just like the city police, they are understaffed and do not have the patrols. Safety is their main priority, and enforcing noise ordinances is tertiary, and apparently enforcing speed limits is secondary.
Yeah, and as far as the history about our work with the park board, going back quite a few years, we spent many long hours in meetings with the park board about what we could do about stormwater runoff and what we could do about the green space and how stormwater management could be built in, and various plans were sketched out, but then it's very, very, very far down the park board's priority list. That's a park. That park is, the green space is park board property, and it's a regional park. It's not a neighborhood park in the sense of a lot of others, even though it's in our neighborhood.
Oh, and I should mention, besides the money we have for neighborhood revitalization programs, when a new building is constructed, park board dedication fees become available. And with the construction at Westlake Quarter, what used to be Calhoun Towers, we now have about $250,000 besides our NRP funds, which we can ask the park board to dedicate to new parks or park improvements in our neighborhood. So that's another area where we're looking to work with the park board. We have a proposal for a new neighborhood park near the bus stop at Franson Lake. And we hope to be pursuing that, as well as potential for other uses of the park dedication fees.
Alyssa, the construction proposed that will be built in the former BP site will be an 8 or 9 story high condo building. So the previous question from a resident about blocking the view of people on the other side of Lake Street is a very valid one.
Hey, any other suggestions from residents about how we could best use our remaining funds? Okay, then we're expecting Mayor Fry to be scheduled in 3 minutes. Michelle, I guess we're still waiting.
We are still waiting, and I'm happy to reorder things if Lene's flexible with that. I know she's on now, so I don't know if she would like to just speak now.
I could, let me just text him. And I'm happy to be interrupted by the mayor. Yep. This way, if he's having any trouble getting in, we'll hear about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Let me just plug in because you know it's hard to listen to these meetings for long periods of time, and you don't deserve the background noise of my family here.
There we go. Can you hear me all right? Super. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight. I worked to get any comments or legislative updates into just 5 minutes here, and then to allow some time for questions. I was asked to focus on the greatest needs of our city like you all were, and it was nice to hear kind of what's on your minds as neighbors in a really important and very changing part of Minneapolis and of the very northwest corner here of my ward. I too think that the most urgent and important greatest need of our city across the board is addressing safety issues. I love that you guys are working on getting people together in different ways, in small scale ways too. I would offer, I don't know if I mentioned it to West McCoska, but my office for anyone in the ward's use recently purchased a wireless speaker system. So if people are looking to still gather outside, right? And sometimes it's hard to hear one another when you're, like sitting in a camping chair group or whatever. You're welcome to come and check that out. I'd be happy to coordinate making it available to any neighbors that want to do a little block club thing or floor of their condo thing or any event. Just know that that's available, and it might make it easier for everybody to participate and to hear. I'm going to pause right now because I understand Mayor Fry is on the line and ready to present, and I can continue with my comments afterward.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Palmisano, and it's good to see you. I wanted to just take the opportunity to reach out to WMSC and also just see sort of what topics you wanted me to cover. And Michelle, I don't know if Michelle is on, but I believe the topics you wanted me to cover is predominantly around a combination of public safety and reform. Is that right?
You got it. Yep.
Great. Well, let me touch on a few of these aspects, both of reform and then public safety, and then I will open it up to any possible questions that you might have. But again, thank you so much to West McCoska and all the work that you're doing to really further these endeavors in your neighborhood. So now, in the areas of reform, I'm just going to jump right in here. There are three overarching areas that we need to focus on. The first is policy change. And we have authored a litany of policy changes over the last several years. I will go through just a few of them. And by the way, they're all specific. You cannot reduce them to a hashtag. You have to be willing to dig in and do the hard work here. When I took office, we had about a 55% compliance rate with body camera footage. In other words, body cameras were being turned on and activated about 55% of the time when they should have. We instituted a disciplinary matrix, and now that number is at 95%. So 55% then, after discipline, 95% now, we're making progress. We overhauled the sex assault policy to make it victim-centered and trauma-informed. We banned warrior-style training for both on and off-duty cops. That's the first time in the entire country that was done. We overhauled the use of force policy to make it as stringent as possible under state law, embedded a city attorney in the disciplinary process to make sure these decisions are expedited as much as we possibly can under state law. And if there's a theme here, we are limited in many cases by the law. We got rid of some of these lower level pretext stops, like hanging an air freshener hanging from the rear view mirror or license plate tabs. Those can no longer be a primary reason for a stop. We banned the execution of no-knock warrants for all but exigent circumstances. And we're doing a substantial amount of work around de-escalation as well, making sure that every single use of force incident is now reported out, whether it's an arm bar or a handcuffing. Even the lowest level uses of force need to be reported out. And more recently, we instituted ABLE training, which incentivizes officers to have some form of peer intervention when they see other colleagues going down the wrong path. ABLE training has worked really well. And we just got our early intervention system passed as well. You know, there's been a lot of talk about wanting to do this upstream work to make sure that officers are stopped from these horrible interactions before they happen. The early intervention system would do exactly that, allow us to suss out the conduct of an officer earlier on, provide them with the necessary well-being or treatment, make sure that accountability is held, and it also helps with safety as well. So this is a big win that we recently got just this last week on early intervention. I'll note that Councilmember Palmisano has always been in support of this. We had a difficult time, however, in past years getting that particular system through the rest of the council. By the way, it's a really big risk mitigation tool as well, because we're able to see ahead of time officers that may have a problem down the road. And obviously that's of critical importance. So that's one topic. Second is safety beyond policing. And I think you've heard a lot about that over this last year, you know, in that not every 911 call requires response from an officer with a gun. We can have social worker response or mental health responders. Now, importantly, you do not need a charter amendment in order to do those things. We are already doing them. We've invested record amounts. And as a matter of fact, we're rolling out a program on this exact topic, likely later this year. And so that's the second big piece. And then the third big piece is culture shift. It's getting the right officers in. It is getting the wrong officers out. We are substantially limited on the latter. In other words, getting the wrong officers out through what is called mandatory arbitration that is required by state law. That has as many as about 50% of the disciplinary and termination decisions that the chief and I make overturned and sent right back to the city. We need to be able to terminate officers that have wrongful conduct, and we need to make sure those termination decisions stick. That requires a change in state law to the arbitration provision. So those were just a few of the areas that we need to focus on in the area of accountability and reform, and there's a whole lot of work left to do. In the area of safety, I have always favored a both end approach, which means, yes, a comprehensive strategy for public safety. It means, yes, of course, safety beyond policing. It means deep accountability. And we also need police officers, period. Give this big push to defund the police that almost all the candidates running against me have taken up, and many of the council members, again, not Lene, in the wake of that, for several reasons, we have lost a very significant number of officers. We were down about a third of our department, and we were low on a per capita basis to begin with. And so now we have fewer officers on a per capita basis than just about any major city in the entire country. And as Chief Arredondo says, that is a major problem because it makes us into what is known as a one-dimensional department, just responding to 911 calls. We need to have a multifaceted approach that accounts for investigations, that accounts for our gang interdiction unit, and officers that can just build out positive police-community relations. You aren't able to build out positive police-community relations if you're simply running from 911 call to 911 call. And in many cases, that's where our officers are right now. So we need a very honest approach here that accounts for the realities that we are seeing right now on the ground. And a few things that we're pushing for just to make sure that these issues are attended to is, one, we've got 5 additional MPD classes that I've recommended in my next budget for next year. So that's 5 additional classes that first need to pass the council. We've purchased at least 16 MPD cameras using those American Rescue Act dollars. That's really important. We have moved towards a civilianization of administrative roles formerly filled by officers using ARP funds. So in other words, where we might have an officer doing a desk job previously, now we've said, let's fill that desk job with a person that can do the administrative work, and let's move that police officer out onto the street where we need them. Additionally, we've formed a violent crime hotspot task force that is doing a substantial amount of work as well to make sure we're focusing on some of these hotspot areas as much as possible. And we've also created an adolescent-specific group violence intervention initiative, which is noting that over this last year, we've seen an uptick in the number of violent incidents that have been perpetrated by fairly young individuals. So we want to give the opportunity to say, all right, you're at a fork in the road, put down the guns, and we will give you every bit of assistance that we possibly can. However, if you don't, there are consequences. And we make and deliver that message very, very clearly. And it's been found to be very successful in the past. Those are just a few items that we are working on at present. And rather than kind of continue to bend your ear, I figured it would be best just to open it up to any questions that you might have. But safety has to be a priority and has to be the most critical aspect that we're focusing on.
I think we probably have time for one question, but Inspector
Great.
Blackwell is also on the line, and she may be able to respond to some of these questions as well. So why don't we take one question and then open it up to Inspector Blackwell. Somebody want to raise their hand with a question? Bob.
With respect to warrior training, was the city doing that, or was the union doing that, or was some other organization doing that?
Great question, Bob. So we already were not doing warrior style training in the city. So it was not part of our training platform even previously. The issue was that officers did have the ability previously to join a warrior style training seminar or class independently from what was happening at the city. And the big problem is when you're trained, it's not like a switch that you can turn on or off. It becomes muscle memory.
Right.
And we don't want officers to be trained in warrior style training externally and then learning procedural justice training and de-escalation training internally. We want to make sure that it's consistent.
The reason I asked, was the union involved with it at all? The reason I asked is if the union was involved, I would think they'd be liable for certain issues.
That's right. Well, when we first started to when we first pushed this ban on warrior style training, you may remember that we got substantial pushback from the union, and specifically Bob Kroll, who's thankfully no longer with the department. Now, they ended up not conducting the ceremony, the seminar that we were very concerned about.
Oh, so the union wasn't sponsoring these things, actually, then?
Well, the point is, it doesn't matter whether the union is sponsoring it or they aren't sponsoring it. They are not allowed to do it.
Well, no, I understand that. The issue is, if the union sponsored it, I would think the union should be liable for things that, you know, if an officer took this training and the union sponsored it, the union should be legally liable for bad outcomes, not the city.
I agree with you.
But if the union didn't sponsor it, it's moot.
That's correct. I agree with you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. I think we're ready to hear from Inspector Blackwell at this time. You're welcome to stay on, Mayor.
Well, yeah, thank you to and thank you to Inspector Blackwell for all the extraordinary work that she's been doing on a very regular basis. Really impressed. So I'll turn it over to the inspector. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I'll just introduce myself. I might not have met everyone, but I'm Katie Blackwell. I'm the inspector at the 5th Precinct. I actually came from training, so if you had any training questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I've been working closely with the mayor, especially in Uptown during the last events in the last couple of months, but been a pleasure to work with him, and he's been very helpful. I got on with me tonight, Lieutenant Chuck McCree. I'm not sure if he was able to sign on yet. I don't see him, but.
Not yet.
Okay. I was hoping you could say hi to, or he could say hi to everybody. So I was tasked with a couple things to go over, and one of them was to talk about homelessness and the outreach programs that the county has. And I'll be the first to say that I'm not sure of all the county programs that we have with the homelessness, but we work closely with the city on that. Obviously, homelessness in itself is not a crime. We are seeing a lot of homeless encampments pop up in different places throughout the city. And we partner with the city homeless outreach is the coordinator, Michael Wu. And so we're basically telling people to contact 311 if you're having problems with homeless encampments. And obviously if it's the public safety, anything to do with public safety, contact us. Never hesitate to call 911. But generally they coordinate their efforts to go into provide resources and provide housing and other things like that. So they do a really good job. And because there's so many, they kind of prioritize those that are public and health safety risks that are going on. And then the other thing that I'm here to talk about was just some of the things, the crime that's been occurring, mostly specific to 5th Precinct and then your neighborhood. So two of the biggest things that we're seeing that we've been highly focused on is robberies in the 5th Precinct. There hasn't been any in your neighborhood that I'm aware of. I checked the crime stats tonight. But we are seeing them and they pop up in patterns. And so we've been working on robbery suppression details and then these violent task force type things. So just a few days ago with a joint detail, they were able to arrest about 15 suspects throughout the city and recovered multiple weapons with that arrest. So those are highly effective and they do them, when they can, a couple times a month or monthly to go after those. And then the second thing with property crimes that we're seeing in 5th Precinct, and it pertains to your neighborhood too, is auto thefts. So the auto thefts in your neighborhood, we've had about 7. I would say throughout the precinct and in your neighborhood, it's about 50% are stolen with keys in the ignition. And the other ones are just stolen randomly from the street or parking garages, things of those natures. So that's one of the biggest things we've been working on. And then the hot rodders, I know, have been a significant issue. Mayor Fry and his team have been wonderful to work with. We've been focused on changing state statute because if you were not aware, it's a misdemeanor and they're very dangerous for our officers to break up. So it takes time for our officers to get into the area and come up with a plan and not go in there alone because we've had so many officers injured. And the last thing we want to do is get in a car chase with some of these individuals because it's so dangerous. So we've been working a lot with the task force in the metro region and trying to prosecute these hot rodders on the back end instead of getting these car chases. So State Patrol's really stepped up, and then some agencies nearby, like St. Louis Park, has helped us out quite a bit over there off Excelsior. And then we were working with the businesses over there on some landscaping designs to prevent them from coming into parking lots. And because once they start building and growing momentum, it's really hard for us to break up without a big contingent of officers. So state legislature, we're going to go, the IGR, the city's IGR committee is going to go there in January. So we've been compiling statistics from throughout the state, because it's not just a problem within the city of Minneapolis, but across the country, really. So with that, I would like to open up to questions that you have for me. See in the chat room. Sorry, I can't see everybody's hands, so.
Inspector Blackwell, yeah, Richard Logan, I've been the safety head for a while in our neighborhood. Could you speak to working with the organization We Push for Peace?
Sure.
And what I've made a point of trying to get to know them, some of their frontline people, but also I've talked to Mr. Pollard about what they do. And I'm very impressed, but I wanted to hear your perspective.
Sure. So Trey from We Push for Peace, we work closely together, and they have been extremely helpful with us. We kind of work hand in hand, even though they're their own separate entity from us, right? So where they're a big help is when we're having scenes like in Uptown and we're trying to deal with civil unrest or closing of peace gardens, we generally like to see civilians who are pushing the We Push for Peace try to talk to the people and end this, resolve it peacefully. And it was really successful in Uptown to do that. So in collaboration with them, and then they've been out and about in some of our hot spots in our crime areas, and they do a really good job on trying to calm the peace. So that, I mean, we fully recognize that sometimes when we show up just in our uniform, it can escalate, people. So we do our best to try to work with them. And generally they're my first phone call if there's a significant incident that happens. And I know they have been working closely with a lot of businesses and different areas where they can. So we have a great relationship with them.
They're retained here in our neighborhood by Whole Foods.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And I know they're retained by Cub Foods and other areas.
Yep.
Does the city have a contractual relationship with We Push for Peace? How is that? What's the nature of that relationship?
So the violence interrupters, and then, they're the ones that work under the city under Director Sasha Cotton. And then they work with We Push for Peace, and A Mother's Love will come to the table when we need, if we're asking for help, or if people are asking for help, they come and help where they can, right? So sometimes some of these, like the violence interrupters, they might be too busy on the north side dealing with things, or We Push for Peace might be heavily focused in places like 30th and Chicago. So generally I will call Director Sasha Cotton for help with that. But Trey and I, we communicated so much, I will generally call him and try to connect him with the businesses as well if they need it.
If people don't know the Trey Pollard's life story, they really should. He's an exceptional human being.
He is truly wonderful, and the work that they do.
Yeah. If I could comment, I got to know Chief Arredondo a bit. When he was deputy chief, he traveled around the city to different neighborhoods and talked about community policing. And I know that's close to his heart. He really wants to have, the multidimensional police force or public safety force once again, so that he can really pursue that. I know that he's deeply committed to that.
Absolutely. And I think We Push for Peace is helping us with that. And they're one of the few organizations that are not kind of afraid to be seen in public with us. So we have a really good relationship, and they're trying to help build that bridge with us. We've lost a lot of our community, not oriented police programs, but our police athletic league, our community engagement teams, because our biggest focus right now is 911 response, especially those that are a higher priority. So their organizations have been instrumental in helping us.
Thank you very much, Inspector Blackwell. I see that Commissioner Marion Green is now on the line, and she's scheduled to speak at 7:10. So Marion, welcome.
Thank you, Inspector.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and thank you, Inspector. Well, greetings, everybody. My name is Marion Green. I'm your County Commissioner, if we haven't had a chance to meet. So I represent you on the Hennepin County Board, and I also happen to be Chair of the Board, which is elected every year just by the group of us commissioners. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight. And I was thinking about my remarks and thinking, wow, a lot has happened since in the year since we gathered around this time last year. And we've been keeping on, I guess. And I suspect that that's true for pretty much everybody on this call, sort of one foot in front of the other. And I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing to sort of keep Minneapolis going, keep the neighborhood going. It's so valued, and it's such an important part of the fabric of, I think, what's made us as a city and as a region really do as well as we have in this very difficult time. When I was talking with Michelle, she mentioned the topics of homelessness, affordable housing, and transportation funding as topics that would be of interest to hear about. So I'll just touch on each of those, and maybe please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we can see, depending on how that goes, maybe we can have some back and forth. So on the topic of working with folks experiencing homelessness, the county continues to make sort of record investments, and in fact, just today voted on the acquisition of a property that's in the Whittier neighborhood that's been about 2 years in the works. It's going to serve people who identify as women. It's about 30 beds, and it adds, with each one of these new facilities, we're adding to the number of beds that Hennepin County has in total, which I think is fantastic. We have continued the shift away from the model of sort of dormitory style, let's say, and we've continued this move towards smaller, more sort of tailored places that serve people in a more culturally specific and relevant way. And we continue to provide many of the supports that we started at the start of the pandemic that we plan to continue. So things like 3 meals a day, shelters are open for 24 hours as opposed to asking people to leave and find somewhere to be during the day. We continue to, we're not charging people. There's a sort of strange thing with benefits that I won't get into, but that practice has ended. I'm delighted. Folks have space to keep things. Something that we've heard over the years from people experiencing homelessness is that folks want security. They want a place where their possessions can be kept under lock and key, and where they don't, so they're not having to carry everything with them. And so we've been working on that too. So nothing necessarily new or inventive to report, as much as just continued really good work expanding the system and continuing to make the system responsive. On the affordable housing front, we've also had sort of record-breaking investment in this space, and we've had quite a bit of coverage in the Star Tribune. So if you've been following our activities there, hopefully you got a chance to see some of our great work. One of the things that I'm the most proud of in this space is the ways in which we have been innovative, pushed by the pandemic, but we're carrying it forward. One of the programs that we've had is something called Hotels to Homes, where we work with folks who are staying in hotels, and it's sort of social work intensive, but working with folks to then get them into permanent housing. But the hotel setting has provided the sort of stability and comfort that helps people have that sort of initial, that initial foundation of stability that they can then they can wrestle with this larger question of a permanent home. And one of the things that we've done that's also tied in with what's going on in the broader economy is we've acquired a number of hotels. So there's one hotel down at about 58th and Lindale, the Metro Inn, which has become a county-owned hotel. There's one in downtown Minneapolis. It's now a county-owned hotel. And these are spaces where we see a couple different things are happening. One is this sort of wraparound intensive social services model, but also we see it as an investment in what's called SROs, single room occupancy. One of the challenges of affordable housing in our market is that we don't have a lot of naturally occurring deeply affordable housing that would be just like a studio apartment. There aren't a lot of those types of units. And so we see these hotels as becoming those types of units and becoming permanent housing. So really excited about the work that we're doing there. And transportation funding. So this is something I feel like I could write a dissertation on. Maybe Michelle, you could guide me a little bit. Would you like to hear about Southwest Light Rail, or also things like road improvements, or actually maybe both as I rattle those off?
Yep, both is perfect. And then there's also a comment in the chat that says the area near the bus layover at Franson Lake has been suggested as a place for affordable housing with a neighborhood park. So what is the status of that concept? So separate from that, if you could touch on that as well.
Great, thank you. And maybe I'll answer that question first. So as you may know, the county owns a piece of property that's near the bus layover at Franson Lake. And there's been an interest in putting a park there. And one of the interests that I've tried to be sort of honest about is that Hennepin County is always looking for places to put more affordable housing because the market is putting the squeeze on Minneapolis, the city, anything inside the boundaries of the city of Minneapolis. That concept has not move further than what I've just shared, that it's sort of an idea, and that if we were to do anything with that property, I'm sure that the West Bedeh-Makaska neighborhood will be one of the first groups of folks to hear about any movement. So nothing really to report on that. To give you an update on Southwest Light Rail, so the project is about, I think it's at 50 or 51% built. It's hard to see that for those of us who are sort of at the Minneapolis end of things, because a lot of the progress has been in the western end of the line. But the project continues to move forward. As folks may recall, the county is the main local funder, but the Met Council, the Metropolitan Council, is the regional authority that oversees our transit system and also is building the project. So you can imagine that it's a setup for a little bit of tension, because Hennepin County needs to stay close to the Met Council. They're spending our money, but we stay very close with them, and they have been extremely inclusive of us and communicative with us. And so things feel like they're going as well as they could. It's a challenging project for sure. It's a big project, and especially in the areas that are near the West Bedeh-Makaska neighborhood, it's disruptive and noisy, and I can't sugarcoat that. It's a big, long project, and I just want to get it done so it starts serving our region and stops disrupting folks who are experiencing noise or trucks or anything like that. And then roads and bridges, I know a topic of interest has been Lake Street, sort of along, I think of it as the northern border of the neighborhood. And I know every time I drive through the intersection with where Lake Street sort of goes off to one side, and then Excelsior Boulevard is the other fork, let's say. I appreciate the improvements that have happened at that intersection. I know that was the sort of first phase of what we all want to see happen along Lake Street. And I'll say more generally that Lake Street and Lindale Avenue, also Minnetonka Boulevard, when Lake Street sort of turns into Minnetonka farther out, and a couple of other county roads, as Minneapolis and St. Louis Park too become more densely populated, these county roads that used to be about really moving people across the region are increasingly becoming the roads that are going right through neighborhoods where lots of people live and where there's lots of pedestrian activity, lots of people biking or rolling on the sidewalk. And I consider it sort of a #1 priority is how do we, as a county, make sure that the built environment continues to support active living and walking and biking. Those are also activities and environments that are conducive to neighborhoods and cohesiveness and sort of the fabric of community. And so these issues come up for Lake Street, but they're coming up across, I'd say on county roads across Minneapolis in particular, and St. Louis Park somewhat. So just looking at another question here, could the county sheriff have any jurisdiction about the hot rodders on Lake Street and Excelsior if issues go beyond traffic violations that have major public safety implications? So thank you for asking about that. The city, the host city, whether it's Minneapolis or St. Louis Park or any other city in Hennepin County, they, except for a very few teeny exceptions, have their own police departments, and they do partner a great deal with the sheriff's office, but they do need to sort of ask for the help, and they need to engage with the sheriff's office, and they tend to be in charge. So there, honestly, I do believe that there's some sheriff's deputies who have been sort of seconded to MPD, and I'm not exactly sure where they are active at this particular time, but those initiatives are led by MPD. And that's a really tough issue that we're seeing all along Lake Street is hot rodding, in particular, like people doing wheelies and so on. It's very dangerous for the people in their vehicles, and it's also very dangerous for folks watching and crowds that develop on the sidewalk. So definitely a significant concern.
One of the features of this that you learned from talking to Mr. Pollard of We Push for Peace is the gang involvement in these. And lots of times there are people sometimes they're like macho competitions between different gang members. Mm-hmm. And there have been shootings and people show up with guns, and it's pretty standard, in fact, for a number of people to have guns at these affairs. So.
Yes.
The reason one of the reasons people often ask, well, why isn't the sheriff more involved? Because Lake Street and Excelsior Boulevard are county highways, but traffic tends to be under the jurisdiction still of the city. As a general, yeah.
So traffic is under the jurisdiction of the city, and policing as well. The county sheriff has a pretty defined role. It is to run the county jail, and then also to transfer folks from the county jail to the courts. And then there are a couple exceptions where the sheriff does have sort of a beat cop role. And those are in teeny little burgs that are out in Western Hennepin that don't have their own police departments. So some really small places. And then the one other exception is that the sheriff's office provides the policing on Lake Minnetonka and on the Mississippi River. So on bodies of water. But past those things, the sheriff's office doesn't really have sort of beat cops, folks who are in the neighborhood and doing things like policing in the neighborhoods or ticketing for, either traffic violations or dealing with these hot rodders and so on. But they are, like all law enforcement agencies, they work very hard to be very collaborative and want to respond if agencies need them. And I know that the relationship between MPD and the sheriff's office has sort of deepened in the last 2 years because of the difficulties that MPD has been facing.
Thank you, Marion. I appreciate you coming to speak to us each year and explaining these jurisdictions. I think our council member, Lene Palmisano, has been patiently waiting for the start of the meeting, and I'll turn it over to Lene now. But thanks again, Marion, for being with us.
I'm delighted, and I'll put my contact information in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marion. All right, guys, I'm back. I got to go in just a couple minutes to another neighborhood annual meeting, but I think that you've heard a lot already from the mayor and from Inspector Blackwell in regards to safety. I will just add a little bit specific to West McCoska, and that I'm super grateful that Lieutenant Oslin from the 5th Precinct during Inspector Blackwell's service absence was successful in getting some safety plans together that helped to enable the police department in St. Louis Park to come and help us address some specific hot rod concerns in your neck of the woods, specific to this corner of the city, along with some of the state troopers. And for that, I'm quite grateful. They can answer other kinds of questions about public safety. I do want to mention we have had a couple of really awful, serious, violent crimes in West McCoska, and I want you to know I take those very seriously. When the mayor speaks about having a very one-dimensional department, I want to mention just how critical it is to keep officers in our investigations unit, because they are the ones that help us solve these awful crimes and help bring people to justice, right? And pulling people out of these very specialized niches, for example, sexual assault investigations, and just to put them on the street to be able to do 911 call response is just not really the best and highest use of our public safety system. So I get that is certainly an immediate need, and one that we are looking to help establish mutual aid with other departments, including the sheriff's office, including Metro Transit. But maybe here on the edges, also it's these neighboring jurisdictions mutual aid pieces that will also help get us some additional support. The hot rodding piece has already been discussed, but just so that people who are all on the call understand, the main area of hot rodding in your neighborhood is jointly owned. Part of it, the part that you see the big extra large like Jersey barriers, they're called F barriers, that are like 6,000 pounds each. That's on like the park board side of it, because those are things that the park board had and could deliver to the site rather quickly. We are looking to also get similar kinds of barriers on the Ackerberg side of that lot to help make that very inconvenient to use. Yes, I know that also might push that activity to other places, but we're just working on some structural kinds of changes that will keep everybody safe and hopefully have that very serious livability issue subside, because I believe it was 6 of the past 7 weekends that you have endured that kind of activity in that lot. The other piece that I wanted to just highlight and mention, and I'm going to put it in the chat here, is about intergovernmental coordination, right? If you haven't heard from Commissioner Green tonight, and from the mayor tonight, and from the police, all of this works, and particularly by you with so many things going on, including the light rail and dealing with county roads and other opportunities, is it takes a lot of interjurisdictional coordination to make that happen. To that end, I was saddened to learn last week that our Met Council Commissioner resigned her position. She did so for personal and professional reasons, and that concludes my efforts to meet with her for several months on some things, but most importantly, to represent you well here. We do need a new Met Council Commissioner. We will be, my understanding is here's the process for that. The governor and lieutenant governor appoint a commission that will make a recommendation on who that new Met Council Commissioner will be. I put in the chat an opportunity for, to click on that if you or somebody that you know might be interested in applying or serving. I particularly see, and this might just be my own selfish perspective, that people in your area are particularly impacted by things that the Met Council has going on right now. And it would be amazing to have a representative on Met Council that might be able to lift up those voices too. So the area that this Met Council position serves is, it is this corner of the city with the lakes, including Lake of the Isles and on down, but it also goes it goes a little bit broader than that. It goes up into St. Louis Park, Golden Valley, and even a bit of Crystal and New Hope. So it's a large region. But for now, I will continue working with the Met Council members who serve other parts of our city and try to get your voices heard through them until we have a new representative on that body. But please do consider people that you know that you think might have those kinds of skills. I will be working to try and be impactful and have a voice in that process on the Minneapolis end. The last quick thing I'll mention, and then I can be done, is just about elections. There's a lot on your ballot. I'm not obviously here to campaign tonight, but just to make sure and ensure that people know when and how to vote. The first precinct 1, I believe, is still at the Bakken, and that is always an easy, coordinated, organized, wonderful voting process. I've been there myself back in my election judge days before I was a council member, and there's also a lot of opportunities to vote either absentee ballot for no reason whatsoever other than you're most comfortable voting at home. And there's an early elections office. It's on East Hennepin. I'm going to put in the website that can take you to all the information, including to know what's on your ballot. But there's all kinds of ways to vote, and there will be even expanded hours in the next couple of weeks in terms of how long that early voting center is open to serve everybody. So whether you vote at home by mail, or whether you vote early in person, or whether you go to the Bakken on November 2nd, I just want to encourage everybody to participate this year. And that's what I got.
Thank you, Lene.
Thank you so much.
Here, I'm going to put the link in the chat that brings you to the Minneapolis Voter Resources site. There we go. And yeah, without any further questions, I'm going to hop over to the Linden Hills Annual Meeting, if that works for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you,
Good
Lynette.
night.
Good night. Okay, and I see we have Senator Scott Dibble with us. Senator
Don't
Dibble
have
and
Representative
Representative.
Frank Hornstein is not on yet, but we do have Senator Scott Dibble. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dibble, for being with us. And looking forward to seeing the other member of your team, Representative Hornstein.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I just spoke with Frank a few minutes ago. He's actually at the Linden Hills Annual Meeting. So he should be popping over momentarily. And then I think tomorrow we have Fulton. So it's kind of a annual meeting season for the neighborhood groups right now. So, well, thanks so much, everyone, for inviting me to share a little bit about this last session. I have some specific, I got some specific assignments, and I actually think I will defer. I had 3 questions. One was around funding for homelessness, another on what's being done for businesses, especially in the commercial corridors in the aftermath of the uprising and COVID. So I have a little bit of information about that, and then what's going on with transportation funding. And Frank, of course, is the chair of the Transportation Committee in the House. And even though I'm the lead in the Senate and work very, very closely with him, it's kind of his report to give, and he's really good at it too. So, and he's very excited about some of the successes we had this year, despite very difficult circumstances, namely being challenged with a Republican chair in the Senate. So it was a pretty good news story. But very quickly, around homelessness, the news actually is pretty good. Actually, I think across the board, we had a fairly successful year. Oh, before I forget, I'm going to put in the chat a link to our newsletter. There we go. So that is a more thorough report, although admittedly a high level overview of the many, many topics that we contend with every year, but it's a little bit more thorough. If you have any questions about any details or anything in particular, please shoot us an email or just give us a call or invite us to coffee, and we're happy to chat some more. On homelessness, I can't remember the exact number, but there was actually substantially more money put into what we call emergency services programs, which is a very flexible source of funding to fund emergency providers, expand shelter capacity and shelter beds and the like, as well as community living supports and helping folks with disabilities find access to permanent, stable, and ongoing housing. Some smaller items that help address issues around homelessness include resources and some requirements that the state colleges and universities create resource hubs, as well as resources, particularly those whose student population indicate a high level of homelessness. There's a pretty exciting initiative providing pretty strong tuition support for young people who are emerging from the foster care system. And that's a new initiative that was really, really exciting to see. I see Marion Green just popped a comment in the chat. The state is granting $20 million in county aid. This actually came through the tax bill of all places, but $20 million per year in aid to counties distributed on a formula basis across the state for the next 5 years to address homelessness and to prevent homelessness. A particular focus of mine, some may recall, is youth homelessness. And when I say youth homelessness, I mean young people who are, for whatever reason, disconnected and unaffiliated from their biological families, who are, out in the larger world and the community and don't have that family connection. And I've been working and speaking with Marion and others to make sure some of those resources are devoted to youth homelessness as well, because there were no actual direct appropriations to increase youth homelessness at my level, at the state level, which I'm very, very disappointed in. I'm going to try to come back in the second half of the biennium and remedy that, because we did have that substantial increase in homelessness overall, as well as targeting quite a bit of the federal COVID relief, as well as the state COVID relief dollars to try to address issues around homelessness. We saw, of course, what happened in the parks with the encampments and the like, which really focused a lot of people's attention. The Department of Corrections as well has been mandated to develop a homelessness mitigation plan so that those who are being released from incarceration don't crash into housing issues. And there's a fairly substantial reform, interestingly carried by a Republican Senate, that requires the Department of Corrections to do all kinds of things, some of which they are doing, some of which they welcome statutory direction to do, and some of which they weren't doing, which includes making sure that people leave prison with an array of information, connection to community resources, access to their medications, making sure their medications are filled for the coming period of 6 months, and the list goes on, which will do a lot to make sure that people are stepping into a more stable circumstance and won't risk both recidivism as well as crisis around homelessness. Additionally, in the tax bill is an additional $30 million targeted towards just generally across the board towards homelessness prevention. And then the Department of Veterans Affairs has been armed with more authority, more policy direction, and more resources to work with the statewide interagency council on homelessness prevention, to end homelessness and prevent homelessness, to try to finally achieve our goal of making sure that all veterans are housed, and we can eliminate that first aspect of the problem. Switching quickly to jobs and economic development and efforts to help businesses that have been hurt with COVID, as well as with the civil unrest that occurred last year in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. We appropriated $80 million in what we call the Main Street Economic Revitalization Program. Those are loans and grants for property and capital improvements. And you might have heard there was a big announcement about the grant availability those grants being released over the last couple of weeks. And it's a lot of money, but not enough. And so it's being distributed on a lottery basis. But a real focus of those dollars is on smaller businesses as well as businesses that are owned and employ those from the BIPOC communities. We have the Main Street COVID-19 Relief Program, that's $70 million. Again, very, very similar program as the Main Street Economic Revitalization Program. From the Workforce Development Fund, about $32.5 million is going to provide workforce development training, business assistance, job expansion targeted at underserved and underrepresented communities. And additionally, quite a bit of the dollars that we've received from the federal government for COVID relief, as well as dollars that we appropriated for COVID relief, is going to support these very businesses. And some of it has been put in the hands of the city of Minneapolis, as well as the final federal bill. The city of Minneapolis, as well as Hennepin County, got some of their own direct appropriations from the federal government. I know Hennepin County stepped in with their grant dollars that were appropriated by the state from the feds, but appropriated through the state to try to fill in some of the gaps that we weren't able to. So that's my report on those two subjects. I can talk about anything else that anyone has questions about. I don't know if Frank has made it into the meeting yet.
Can you hear me, Scott? I'm in the meeting, but I had to join by phone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. I can hear you. Can other people?
Okay, yeah, my Zoom wasn't working for some reason.
I told
for this meeting.
Frank, I told him I would have you do the transportation report because it's such a great report and you do such a good job on it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. I am so sorry that I can't see folks. This happens from time to time with my particular Zoom program. It must be a little out of date. I wasn't able to get into this meeting. So I apologize for that, but thank you so much for the invitation. And I am very honored to chair the Transportation Committee in the House, and I work very, very closely with Senator Dibble because he's the lead on transportation in the Senate. So we're a District 61 team together, as we've been for many, many years on transportation. And so Senator Dibble was very, very involved from the start in putting together what I think is a very good transportation bill. I know is a very good transportation bill, even though we fell short on what we wanted, which was long-term dedicated funding for road, bridges, and public transportation. That was not going to fly in the Senate. We were able to win a major victory for public transportation in the region by securing funding for 2 new arterial bus rapid transit lines. These are rapid buses that run on major streets. And what I think is most exciting for our community is that we were able to obtain funding for the E line. That's E as in Edward. And this is going to be enhanced service on the number 6. And so this is a bus that runs from the University of Minnesota to Southdale. And so what you're going to have now is stations that where you pay ahead of time with a machine, or you tap your card or just put some cash in. You board with a low platform, and then you're off in every 10 minutes or so on a comfortable bus. Some of them will be hybrid, some of them will be electric. And this is a much, much more enhanced and user-friendly system than we currently have. And we also secured most of the funding for another line, arterial bus rapid transit line that goes from downtown up to the northern suburbs. So it's really exciting. I think we can be kind of a center for this type of transit service in the country. We're going to try to get funding for a couple more lines this year in the bonding bill. Another thing we did, which I'm very, very pleased about is that a couple years ago, Senator Dibble, through his efforts, was able to set up a specific funding program to support bus and pedestrian enhancements. And of course, the West Baday-Mecoska Neighborhood Council has been really a leader in the city in terms of bike and pedestrian safety. We have so many challenges with that. And so this fund that Senator Dibble helped set up, we now have for the first time funding in this program, and we secured $5 million for that. We have a second train now in the works, an Amtrak train from Chicago, from Duluth, the Twin Cities to Chicago. We're hoping we'll get one from the Twin Cities to Duluth this coming session. And, you know, a number of other things in the transportation bill that really are significant, because transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions among the different many sources, electric utilities, agriculture, et cetera. Transportation is now number one. So we have to do everything we can to curb global warming gases from the transportation sector. And that's been one of my goals, and I think shared by many people. So those are some of the highlights of our transportation bill, and you know, working together with Senator Dibble and many others, you know, we will continue to promote public transportation, smart investments in highway and bridge repair, and making biking and pedestrian access and infrastructure safer and more available to many people. Senator Dibble, did I leave anything out?
I think you covered it. Yeah, I was going to mention the Fix It First policy, but you just caught that at the end there. So
Yeah, and also we fell a little short. We wanted to have a first ever Minnesota policy to help us have a goal to reduce the vehicle miles traveled, car use, but that will have to wait, I think, for a different political alignment. But those were some of the highlights here.
Well, thank you so much, Senator.
Happy to
Dibble.
answer questions as well.
Yeah.
We do have a question in the chat. It says, is it true the BRT line uptown to downtown St. Paul isn't expected to be active until 2024? Can you tell us when the E line, University of Minnesota to Southdale, will go live?
Okay, I'm so happy to hear those two questions. We were able to secure money for the B line, that's B as in boy, which, as the questioner pointed out, will go from the area near the West Lake light rail station all the way to downtown St. Paul via Lake Street. So much improved bus number 21 service. We were able to secure funding for that line just this past fall in October, and there is federal money available. So that line is completely funded. And my understanding is that you know, this line will be under construction shortly and throughout 2022. I have not heard 2024. My understanding is that there'll be some progress made on that, and we can have a line open in 2023, the later part of that year. But I will double check, and maybe if whoever's chairing the meeting I could either share with the entire group or the questioner when this will be done. But I think, yeah, 2023, later part of the year, or 2024 would be my understanding here.
Yep, and Senator Scott Dibble did put in the chat a link to Metro Transit website that talks about the Beeline project. So thank you.
Good.
And
So
I'll say, it does say 2024 on the information page, but that is not my understanding. And if you look out there, they're going great guns and they've got the money. So I think it's very possible that it'll be up and running sooner than that.
Yeah, my understanding is that you know, it would be prior to 2024. So, but we will confirm that. But I think that we can expect construction really for the better part of next calendar year.
And then the E-line, 2025 is what they're saying, but we also think that it could probably be sooner than that.
The E-line funding is also secured. All of the money that we need from the state was encumbered in this last bill that was passed just in June. And, and I believe that we'll also have federal money secured for that too. And on this piece, there will be a significant transit, not as much as I think Senator Dibble and I would like, but there will be a transit piece to the infrastructure bill that we anticipate will be passed, I hope, before the end of the year, possibly later this month. That's the big federal infrastructure bill that's been in the news, really historic in nature in terms of the amount of federal money. And that's for roads, bridges, public transit, airports, many, many different kinds of transportation projects, rail projects, passenger rail, and there will be some federal money available to our public transit system as well in that bill. So happy to take any other transportation or any other questions. And I want to thank Senator Dibble for covering the housing and redevelopment piece as well. We're both active in that. I sit on a committee in the Minnesota House on preventing homelessness. So any housing questions as well, I'm happy to take offline as well.
Hey, do we have any final questions for Senator Dibble or Representative Hornstein? If not, I thank you both for taking the time to be with us this evening to answer our questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. And thank
Good
you
to see,
all.
good to see both of you.
Good to see both of you, and good to see all the residents of West McCuska who showed up to show their interest in our talking to our elected officials this evening. Good night, all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Great job again. Say, Tim Walker, I just wanted to say that delivery issue that you have because you have this 3044 or Chowan Avenue address over there. That's part of the Axon Green Diet program that you guys signed up for. That was how that works.
I see. Preventing all the residents from getting pizza, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Megan, thank you. Listen, I really appreciated the energy we got from residents tonight too, and our new board members as well. So, hey, things are, all of us older guys on the board are very happy to see the board get younger and younger and younger.
Average age has dropped significantly.
Yeah, that's for the future.
Looking forward to all the new ideas, you new guys.
Darn right.
Okay, I think we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night.
Have a good night.
Very much.